In an unprecedented and contentious mid-cycle redistricting vote, the Indiana Senate rejected the implementation of new district maps in advance of the upcoming midterm elections. How we got here and what's next, as well as what's ahead for the 2026 legislative session, right now on Prime Time. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Prime Time. I'm your host, Ed Leon. HB 1032, the controversial redistricting plan that would have changed Indiana's voting maps, has been voted down 31-19 in the Senate. But the road to that no vote has been at times bitter and ripe with national implications. Joining me to discuss that issue and other priorities for the 2026 legislative session are the party leaders of the Indiana House. From District 79, the Republican Majority Floor Leader, Matt Lehman. And from District 80, the Minority Leader of the Democratic Caucus, Phil GiaQuinta. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
It's nice to be here.
All right. So, Matt, I want to start with you. How would you characterize what happened in the last 2 weeks? What happened in that session?
Well, it's probably easy to say unprecedented.
Yeah.
Is the first thing I'd probably say. I think it's been an interesting dynamic of just looking at how we got to this place. I think if you can go back and look at history, you can go back and look at how we went from this position to this position to this position. But at the end of the day, I think what the momentum was growing was that, it starts here, then this state, then this state, then this state, and you kind of see that, I don't want to say the ball rolling down the hill approach, but we kind of got to where, you have to say, okay, there's a difference between can we do this and should we do this, right? I think that was kind of the debate at times. Was, we can, it's legal, it's constitutional, it's followed the Supreme Court rulings, but then you really got into more of the debate of what long-term effects might that have. And so I think when we as a House looked at this, I'll be the first to say I voted against it.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is it fair to ask how you voted?
Yeah, I voted no. And I was pretty clear with my caucus, and a lot of constituents asked me, and I said, I feel like I got to look at Indiana as the majority leader. I had to look at my caucus and say, how do I continue to maintain, and with all due respect to the minority, how do I maintain that majority? And I've said it from the floor, is we focus on policy, not politics. And so I felt like that's what's got us here. I want to continue that, continue focusing on policy, and I felt like our caucus needed to stay focused on that, and I'm fear some of the ramifications, had this gone through, would have had maybe a detrimental effect on our caucus.
Yeah. How'd you feel when the vote came down? Were you happy?
Yeah, I mean, happy. I mean, it's I tell people I can make the argument kind of both ways here. I think as we've talked before, when you look at history, you look at the stage was set, and I think if you look at the maps and you look at a map of Northeast, the whole northeast corner of the United States.
Yeah, in fact, you mentioned the maps.
Representation.
You mentioned the maps. We do have the maps. If the booth can throw those up, these are on the left side is the current map, the current voting districts, and on the right we have what was proposed. It certainly affected your districts as well, right?
It affected all of them. And I think what you're seeing there is, and unfortunately, it's you could say the one on the right is what we're seeing in multiple states. And I think the one on the left, I thought when we did this, 3 years ago, I know it wasn't, I don't think you guys voted for it 3 years ago, but I felt like we did a pretty good job, and that's why I went to the floor 3 years ago and said these are fair maps. Yeah, these are good maps, and I think that's why I stuck with what I had agreed to, and 3 years ago, and when I said that from the mic 3 years ago, I meant it, and that's why I voted the way I did.
Phil, your thoughts on the session, this early session?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, it was fairly contentious at times. Yeah. That doesn't explain the Band-Aid on my that I have today. So
you didn't get them. You didn't get them.
We sit across from each other. I didn't touch him.
Sometimes he swings in it, but unfortunately, I had a little issue this afternoon, doctor's office. But we're all good. I'm Matt. I was thinking that it feels like in one sense we just got done with a long session, because this topic and this discussion started at the end of July, 1st of August. And then now here we are in December. And of course, most long sessions, all long session, go approximately 4 months. So it's been an interesting journey. I think the thing I've been most impressed, though, is the engagement that the public has had on this. We've had a number of town halls, my caucus members, to get feedback and to hear from folks. Obviously, there have been rallies, but I think the main thing is we try to, like we do on a lot of issues, is basically say, hey, let your voice and your opinion be known. Call your local reps and senators and tell them how you feel.
Yeah, and by the way, that's an excellent segue for me. I want to remind our audience that PrimeTime is your direct connection to your elected officials. They're right here. Our phone lines are open right now for your questions and comments at 866-969-2720. 866-969-2720. From each of you, why do you think it lost? Why do you think it was defeated?
Well, I think if you watched any of the Senate debate yesterday, I think you heard from those who ultimately voted no and defeated it, was that they were listening to their constituents. I think overwhelmingly they heard from the people in their districts who said, we don't think this is a good idea. I think it has, I mean, there are, again, not to go deep into the weeds, and we won't, is there's some potential ramifications across the United States in fair representation in Congress. But again, I think they looked at it as I'm not here to, what you heard from Mike yesterday was, I'm not here to argue on behalf of what should and should happen in Congress. I'm here to represent the people of my Senate district. Right. Same thing on the House side. So I think they overwhelmingly heard from their district that this is not something they want to pursue, and they voted accordingly.
Was some of it the idea that, or the sense that this was kind of imposed onto Indiana? From the national level?
Yeah, I mean, you can honestly say that there was that pressure, but at the end of the day, I think we all look at this as I'm not elected to represent an entity. I'm representing like 68,000 people in District 79.
Right.
And so I listen to them. I listen to what I think they want us to do, and overwhelmingly, I heard from people was this is just not the right time to do this.
Yeah. Phil, your thoughts on the tenor of the whole thing? There have been threats. There have been, it got kind of ugly at times.
Yeah, and like most issues that you come across, there's never one reason why you might vote yes or no on an issue. I do think, and I've said this many times, I do think as legislators, Hoosiers in general, I think we're pretty independent bunch, and we want to make up our own minds. We don't want anyone telling us what to do or how to do it, especially anyone coming from DC. We're gonna kind of do what we want to do and vote the way we think is best, particularly how it comes to our constituents. I've heard and seen. I wasn't the recipient of any of these tactics, but there have been plenty of members that were totally uncalled for, out of bounds. The Speaker and I did a joint statement a couple weeks ago, calling for the same. That hey, look, this is not where it should be, and we shouldn't be. People should not be engaging in these sorts of tactics, and that probably hurt the cause more than help. That these folks that are making these threats think that's going to help. Well, you're absolutely wrong. I think, frankly, legislators are going to dig in even more, dig in their heels even more when they start to receive threats like that. So.
Right. Well, there has been, I don't know if it's a threat, but there's talk of eventual punishing of legislators that did not vote this way, either with by being primaried or not having access to funds and from PACs, et cetera. Are you concerned about that at all, Matt?
No, I think I would say that's the political side of all this, and again, I want to stay focused on the policy side of this. I think we'll have to deal with that. I think there's going to be some issues that we're going to have to deal with as a caucus when it comes to primaries potentially and other issues. But again, we have a litany of things that I think Hoosiers have asked us to focus on. I was talking to one gentleman who was very adamant that we do this and we do this, and I said, I think if you take your little pad of paper and you go over to the gas station and you ask the public, do we redistrict? And then ask them, are they paying more for groceries and energy and things like that?
Right.
And what do you want me to focus on? I think the issues are going to be very guided towards find out what's hitting Hoosiers the hardest. And that's what we've tried to focus on over the last couple of years, and I think we'll hope we continue to do that. So we'll deal with what happens, and then that's the political side which we'll handle.
So is the issue put to bed now at this point?
Well, it is for the 26th session.
Yeah.
Can the governor call us back into special session over the summer or something like that? We're going to be well into election season, so I don't think that will happen. I have no idea about next year or 2028 or those. Now you're getting pretty close to when we're going to draw the maps again in 2031.
Right.
Time flies when you're having fun. So this, and then we're getting close because we're going to have to do it again anyway in 2031 when the new census numbers are in and things like that. So I'm guessing it's probably done.
Yeah. Well, now that that's off the table, the legislative session resumes in January. What are we looking forward to in terms of policies and priorities for you?
Well, like I said, I think our caucus is going to focus on what we've tried to focus on in the past several years. I think healthcare issues, healthcare cost issues in the state of Indiana have been an issue. I think I come from a rural area, rural hospitals. I want to make sure we're protecting our rural hospitals. And so I think that's still going to be an issue. We've passed several pieces of legislation the last couple of years that are now just starting to kind of take root and take effect. I think we're seeing some positive of that. I think also we're going to have issues around just, I'll call it the kitchen table issues of energy costs. You know, we went from one of the cheapest in the nation to now one of the, somewhere in the middle maybe. And so I think we have to make sure we don't let that continue to kind of drift out of control. So I think there's a couple issues there, and you always have the issues around housing and just and economic development. You know, we've had our foot on the gas pedal on that for several years, and I think we've done some really good things in Indiana. We need to keep that going. I
want to talk about several of those, but Phil, I want to give you a chance to what are your priorities?
Yeah, sure. When if I can back up just a couple months ago, 2-3 months ago, when we were called into special session, I guess it was going to start November 4th, something like that. Our focus was, hey, it's fine, governor's calling us in for a special session, but we don't think we should go there to talk about redistricting. We think we should go to talk about really, I agree with Matt, the issues that really are more important to Hoosiers, and that's this kind of the affordability costs, the issues that we've seen. Right. It's been really all over the country. Actually, something I talked about even in my little opening talk last January. So we'll continue to talk about that again. I mean, one of the issues is the cost of child care. And it's been disappointing to see. Just had a child care facility in my district announce that they were closing at the end of this year. And so there's, and that has to do with the vouchers and things like that unfortunately had not been extended. So we had some ideas, and we actually tried to bring those forward in last week when we were in session. Weren't successful, but we'll continue to push for ways to lower healthcare costs, utility costs, the child care issues, healthcare, all these things that we think are important to Hoosiers.
Yeah, it's interesting to listen to you guys, and we come off of these, bare knuckle political, discussion, and now look at his look.
I know exactly.
And now you're talking about things that are, these are kitchen table issues, like you said. Let's talk about healthcare, because that seems to be such a difficult nut to crack. Tell me a little bit about the things that you have put in place. What do you see as something, what new policies or what new approaches can we look forward to?
Well, I think like everything else, some things we implement, and if we don't see the results immediately, we seem to pivot and we make changes. And I think two things we did last year were House Bill 1003 and 1004. One dealt with more of the transparency and the disclosure side of things, and making sure people understand their options they have as consumers, et cetera. And then we had 1004, which basically said, hey, to the not-for-profit hospitals in the state, which manage the majority of care, you need to make sure that your costs are fair and you're seeing some reduction, or possibly lose that not-for-profit status. I think that really got a lot of attention. I think what we have to do now is the other side of that coin is the insurance side of it.
Right.
And so we're seeing some things now that we have to maybe go in and say, hey, we got to make sure that what is being saved here isn't consumed here without getting to the end user. So I think those are going to be some issues we're going to deal with.
Phil, healthcare hits at the heart of affordability, which which means different things to different people. So does that seem to square with how you?
A lot of the focus the last couple sessions has been on hospitals, and you mentioned transparency, hospital costs. And I have been encouraged by seeing some of the reports back from Parkview and IU Health and others that they're making some decent headway here with regards to their role in helping reduce costs.
It doesn't seem to be enough for people, though, right? The people's perceptions is that everything's still too expensive.
Well, and for sure, and I think that we're going to see some other, unfortunately, coming down. We're state legislators, we're not federal legislators, but there's going to be some interesting things coming up here in the next couple of weeks with healthcare subsidies and things like that. So that's on the federal level. So sometimes we have to make sure that we differentiate what we do and our responsibilities versus the responsibility of the federal government.
In affordability, you also mentioned energy costs. Talk a little bit about where we're hurting.
So I think it's going to lead to a lot of discussion, possibly even when you get into the the users of this energy, and you're getting into the some of the data centers that we see popping up. And there you got to find that balance between these are massive job creators and economic bonuses, but at the same time we got to make sure we have a good balance. And I think a lot of it is going to be around, are we looking at alternatives as well? I think we passed a bill a couple years ago allowing for the development and the incentivizing of small nuclear. I think if you look at where energy's going, I think you can look at, and I've not always been the hugest fan of renewables, but I do think if you look at solar, I think we're going to get to a point where you don't need 80 acres to create X amount of megahertz. You need 10 square feet.
Right.
Look at your phones. I mean, all the technology has gotten so much smaller. If you get there, I think you're going to create a lot better energy grid when you start looking at some of these alternatives. And I think it's a mix. It's going to be a mix of a lot of energy pieces that go in that, and then also just making sure we're not passing the cost of some of that directly to the consumer, but maybe the other ones are bearing some of the brunt of that. It's these bigger data centers.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, I want to make sure, I think we all do, make sure that consumers are protected as much as possible. So whether it's build out of data centers or nuclear, the things that Matt was just talking about, we want to make sure that all, the cost isn't, the brunt of the cost isn't thrown back onto the consumers. And whatever help we can be into making sure that doesn't happen, I think all the better. So, the Google here in Fort Wayne, the Meta, the Facebook, down in southern Indiana, those they do very well. They make a lot of money, and I just want to make sure that consumers, again, aren't bearing the brunt of that, any type of expansion or things like that. And let's be fair to consumers here and making sure that corporations are paying their fair share.
So Meyer, who's one of our viewers, wrote in and wanted to, first of all, thank you for the no vote on the redistricting, and also wanted to ask a question about how the Google data center here in Fort Wayne, how does that factor into the high energy costs? It is a giant consumer of electricity. And you said a job creation. I don't know if it creates that many jobs after it's been built, but it certainly creates economic. It is an economic driver. Those centers have been known to be energy hogs. I don't know if that's a proper term for them, but how do you balance? Like you said, Matt, how do you balance the having those and how it affects the entire ecosystem of energy?
Yeah, I think part of that is you have to also look and say, is what's being built needed or used by the public? Yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
data
absolutely.
centers.
And we want data, right? We want data. We want it now. We want it instantly. We want AI. And so when you think of the fact that I may not like what they're doing exactly, but I will absolutely 100% use their stuff. So if we're going to use their stuff, we want their stuff, then we have to make sure we're adhering to making sure that they, as Phil said, this should not be borne by the brunt of 100% on the consumer. Those industries, as other ones do, need to take some of that responsibility. And I think we've heard that from them, is that, we'll work with you on that. We'll work with the electrical providers, et cetera. But I think it also goes back to what I said earlier. I think if we have to also give them the ability to look at multiple pieces of that puzzle. How else do we generate electricity? How else do we generate power? And I think long term, if you can look into a crystal ball in the future, is going to be you're not going to be powering those facilities the way you are today. I just don't think you will through the natural gas or.
I'm guessing we're going to probably have some hearings on this. There was a public forum last night. I was unfortunately I had a conflict. I wasn't able to go, so I'm kind of anxious to read up about that and see what happened there. But I will tell you, for example, water. The Google facility will use a lot of water, and to help, which keeps the servers cool. When I think of General Motors out here, uses a lot of water, and we have plenty of water, so that's not going to be an issue. In fact, the fact that they're using so much water, and we have the water, it's going to help spread the costs and make our rates, water rates, much more affordable. So when we have to go in front of the IURC for a rate increase, it's not going to be as large because we're using that water, and the Googles and GM and other big facilities that we have here in Allen County that are using that water. It kind of helps spread that cost around to the rest of us, and it's actually helpful.
Yeah, I think that these are new businesses in many ways, and I think the general voter that doesn't know how to that we've kind of figured out how to manage them yet. And they're a different kind of utility almost that is coming into the.
And you think of it this way: is will their cooling systems change?
Right.
We think of their technology. Will they figure out a way to keep their systems cooler, to not consume as much energy?
Well, part of the controversy with Google, the Google Center here, has been that they asked for 3 or 4 digital or diesel backup generators, and now they want 129. Where did that miscommunication happen? Right? There's an oversight gap somewhere in there. Are you involved in those kinds of oversights? Those are local boards, right? Yeah.
I'd say a lot more local.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the state level, I don't know about IDEM and some of those others might be involved, and those government agencies, not so much on the legislature.
I want to bring us back, not all the way, but back to the redistricting vote. That was national headlines, and this vote was on the front page of the New York Times. It is resonating now as Indiana has bucked a trend. What do you think that says about Indiana that this vote went this way?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say what I said earlier, is that I do think we have legislators are, an independent group. Matt voted no. I voted no, of course, but we've been around a little while. There are some other legislators that have been around a while that I believe sort of recognize, in my opinion, the value of the institution of the state legislature. And part of that is we have things to do at certain times, and one of the things that we do is draw maps after the census, so in 21 and then again in 2031. I don't think necessarily Senator Beret I've been told, wasn't necessarily lobbying his caucus one way or the other, but I also know that my dad served with his dad, I served with his dad, now Rod serves with me, and I'm just saying he's got some connection back to those folks that have been around a while, and I do believe there's some value in that, in the protection of the institution, and that was always one of my things, is we just don't do this mid-decade.
You brought up child care as one of the issues that's important to you in the next session. What has been tried here, and what new approaches can we take?
Well, I think you're probably going to hear about.
And is it always does it always come down to funding?
Well, there'll be some that say, are there the barriers to entry? Can we let others into the market? But I am concerned that the number of vouchers that have been used, because one of the things that we put out there last week was to extend, go back to where we were with the number of vouchers statewide that were money that was allocated for that, because I have been told that we've seen the numbers drop, and then the number of kids that are coming through behind aren't really there. So that's an issue going forward.
Yeah. We're about to run up against the clock here. Any final thoughts on either the session or the session to come?
No, I think I think the one thing I'll say, kind of going back to the Indiana, is that we will focus on the things I think meet the needs or affect most Hoosiers in the next session.
Speaking of Hoosiers, let's win the Rose Bowl. Let's win the national championship. Right. We're all rooting for IU, even the Boilermakers.
Even the Boilermakers, a little bit, a little tiny bit.
Well, I'm fairly new to Indiana, and I'm certainly struck by how this all played out. It is a very independent thinking and.
We like to do our own thing. I don't think we necessarily like being in the national spotlight. That's the way it was.
Yeah.
No, and we normally do run under the radar. You don't see a lot about Indiana.
When the session resumes, do you think there will be a lot of energy for all the new things coming out of this redistricting vote?
Yeah, I think we'll be back on track. I look at this, and you look at other states that have done this. They've said it's kind of a big thing, and then it kind of trickles down. So I think by January, you're going to see everybody kind of refocus back on what Indiana does best.
Okay.
little concerned there. Honestly, there could be some hard feelings on the House floor. Honestly, just because it's a, when we redrawing the map and kind of getting rid of the 2 Democrats there, it could cause some hurt feelings. We have important business to do, so I hope it doesn't linger.
All right. Well, listen, you guys have been terrific. Thank you so much.
And welcome aboard.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Great job.
thank you. It was
new gig.
my maiden voyage.
Sorry you had to start off with
my maiden voyage.
Yeah.
You guys made it easy on me. Okay.
It only goes up from here.
Just get better.
All right. I want to thank my guests, House Republican Majority Leader Matt Lehman and House Minority Leader of the Democratic Caucus, Phil GiaQuinta. And thank you for watching us tonight. We'll see you next time on Prime Time.
The preceding program on PBS Fort Wayne was made possible in part by
the Regional Chamber of Northeast Indiana advocates for world-class infrastructure, a competitive business climate, 21st century talent, and rural investment. One region, one voice. NEINadvocates.com. The Rogers Company has been conducting business in Northeast Indiana since 1944 as Rogers Markets and now as the Rogers Company with commercial property and real estate development. Pleased to support local not-for-profits and PBS Fort Wayne.